Let's go. Welcome to Locked On Badgers, another live reaction show. Another commit comes. This is a big one. Normally I'm pretty reserved, but let's go. Let's get it. We got a lot to talk about on today's Locked On Badgers.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings, your team every single day. Really do appreciate everybody tuning in to this live show. We got a lot to talk about today. But first, today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we're going to bring Scott on the show. Scott, man, it's been a while since you've been here.
Been a minute.
It's been a minute. So I also have a storm. It's funny because Phil Longo tweeted about recruits are raining in Madison. I have a storm going through my area right now, so I hope I don't lose power or anything. That would be so apropos, right? But CJ Williams, right? The high four-star composite receiver commits to Wisconsin, former USC receiver. Scott, how are you feeling in this moment right now?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the deep end now, you know. I think there were quite a few of us for the last few years who thought, like Nick Evers, we were a sleeping giant. And we just needed that extra cachet of, having a coach who could get us there. He's opened all the doors. And I think Longo obviously is the hire that has really propelled a lot of it. So feeling great. I liked the two new additions yesterday as well. But this gives us serious cachet nationally as far as being able to score top 50, top 75, skilled players, non-offensive linemen. This is a big change. Has it ever happened? Isn't he the highest rated wide receiver in like the 247 era or whatever?
Yes. Like he's the highest. I can't remember another receiver that came in. I mean, what's the highest off the top of your head? Like, what's the highest ranked receiver? Wisconsin, Craig Appleton.
Right.
Maybe. I haven't researched this.
Yeah, I feel like there were a couple maybe about 10 years ago. But yeah, Appleton, maybe Nick Toon, maybe. But was he a 3? I don't know.
He was a 4-star, but he wasn't a top. Like this is a top 70-ish player in the country last year. The number 10 receiver in the country, the number 6 player in the state of California.
And that's another thing. Not a local guy to Wisconsin. Nick Toon was a legacy, Mm-hmm. So no, I mean we're expanding our, the umbrella, if you will, across the country. Getting in a lot of Texas kids, getting into Cali now. Interesting. Did you know that Olive went to the same high school?
No, I did not.
Yeah, he went to that Mater Die. Is that how you say it? Or
yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it wouldn't shock me. Like, there's a couple powerhouses out there.
Yeah, he went there. But it's big. It's big time.
There might be a problem with the comments. I just realized that they're not streaming. So if you guys are trying to comment and you're watching, it could be a YouTube thing, but we're going to keep rolling no matter what. So we also added the 2 other receivers, right? You have Burrows and Pauling.
Yeah.
How does this receiver room stack up to you right now?
Well, I think it's great. You get a guy in Williams who can, we're expecting him to come in and play immediately. And then you get Burrows and Pauling, who both look like they've got a lot of potential. Burrows, like you said yesterday, he's 6'2", 200, 205, 445. His high school tape, he looks fast too. He goes up, he gets the ball. He high points the ball a lot in those in that high school tape. And Pauling, he looks a lot like Crookshank to me. He's got those moves in the open field. Got the quick twitch. So we got some potential there, and then we've got a guy who should be able to come right in. And again, just like with the quarterbacks, you get more competition. As you say, iron sharpens iron, and that's what we want. And I do think that we've got a couple guys there already who are better than what they looked like in our system in Bell and Lewis and DK as well. But, Bell and Lewis and Williams could be quite a, triumvirate this year.
Isn't it like it's really amazing to me how quickly this has all shifted? Like Fickell's been here 5 weeks. Does it feel like 5 weeks? Like it's almost like it's a different world that we're living in right here as Badger fans. And one of the things I was talking about is it feels like we're recruiting at the blue blood table. And one of the comments we got here, I want to bring it up. See if I can find it quick. And I already lost it. But it spoke to the fact I mentioned on a previous show, and I apologize to the guy whose comment this is because I can't find it right now. But I said Wisconsin's never going to be Ohio State. They're never going to be that level. And I had a comment that asked, well, Ryan, what about this? We've now brought in 3 4-star quarterbacks, a 4-star receiver. I think the difference still is Ohio State has 4-star everywhere on the 1, 2, and 3 deep. Right? It's still, I don't think we're ever still going to get to that point. But at this point, I don't know if I want to sell Luke Fickell and Wisconsin short anymore.
I don't think we should. And I mean, if this is what we can do in less than 2 months, and the thing is, and I said this on a previous pod, like Georgia 6-7 years ago, people only remember what they just saw. Like Georgia 6-7 years ago, they were getting quite a bit of talent, but before Kirby Smart, they were not, what we think and see of them now. Clemson wasn't that way before Dabo. So, you have to have some imagination with this stuff and a vision, which Fickell has both, and so did McIntosh.
Yeah, and it goes back to McIntosh, really, right? That's the top of this food chain, and We've talked about that before. Like it would have been so easy, not 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, to say, all right, Jim Leonard's the guy. We're pulling that interim tag, and nobody would have complained. Somebody always complains, but that was the move, and nobody would have complained. And now look at where we're at. You got to imagine, man, in an alternate universe where we hired Jim Leonard, we never knew this existed, right? In the multiverse where we hired Jim Leonard, and wow, like kudos to McIntosh. He pulled this off.
Yeah, I mean, and we all love Jim. It wouldn't have gone down like this, though. He wouldn't have had a relationship with the guy like Longo, who already had the cachet nationally of developing all these wide receivers and quarterbacks. It's been one, stroke of genius after another from McIntosh. And it's almost, it is an out-of-body experience. And I think that so many of us sold him short and just assumed he was going to be a clone of Barry. I kind of feel like Barry told him to, like, be your own guy. Like he chose him because he knew he was a Wisconsin guy, but he knew that, this is a bright guy who's got a vision and, execute your vision. So that's what he's doing.
I just realized I've been trying to the reason I'm looking off to the side, you see this, I'm trying to get the chat working again. For some reason, the chat stopped working, and that's very frustrating. I don't know why, y'all. I have comments from before the show started, but once it started, no comments have loaded. At least for me. I don't know if Scott, you see comments coming up.
No, but I can pull this up and see on our live and see if I see any there.
Yeah, I think I see more there. So I do apologize. Maybe you'll kick in, but I have other comments to get to as well. I want to talk also about the receiver room in general. Like, where do you think CJ fits into? Because there is a good comment in here before the show started. This is from Thomas Miller, who's been on a lot of shows. I appreciate. He said, let's pump the brakes a bit. There was a reason he only saw limited action on the field for USC. I would also add to Thomas's comment, big-time recruits bust a lot in college football. Like, so I actually agree with this comment. I'm not expecting him to be a star. I think it's just adding to the stable, though, and the more bodies you get in there. I just think we're upgrading talent and depth at every position. But I think Thomas has a solid point here. Certainly, CJ is not a guarantee.
Right. I think it can go both ways there. First of all, yeah, the competition is really going to help. Anytime you've got an extra guy who's talented, that's a good thing. I think it can go both ways in that, yes, he hasn't played a lot. He could bust. But I was watching some USC podcasts where they still had high hopes for him. And they just got a few transfers in last year. They've got one of the top 2 wideouts, probably Addison, going into the draft that they got from Pitt. they had a full stable of 4 and 5 stars themselves. So as far as him not having a lot of PT last year, I don't know how much, that plays into it, because he was a true freshman with, several upperclassmen who were 4 and 5 stars in front of him. And Lincoln Riley made a point a few times of saying how impressed they were and the hopes that they had for him. So no, I mean, I'm not expecting him to just go out there and be Lee Evans this year. But, with that being said, there should be reason for optimism, obviously. And even if he only fulfills 3/4 of his potential, he's still going to be a really solid, wide receiver for us. So it's a good thing. I see both sides, but of course we should be excited about all this.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't know what's happening with the chat, y'all. This drives me nuts. I brought our live feed up on another channel. I see the chat rolling on that, but for some reason it's not rolling for me to put it up. But I'm still going to respond to comments here. We are going to take a very quick break. We got to get to our friends of the show. Then we're going to get back. We're going to continue talking CJ Williams, talk about the hype around the program, realistic expectations next year, and a new defensive line coach. There is a ton going on here. But first, today's show is brought to you by our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. It is the place I go to for all of my betting needs. Do it responsibly, but definitely something that, again, if you want to get on the futures with me with the 49ers Super Bowl, Phoenix Suns NBA Finals, let's get it. The sky's the limit here. It's also a great place to cover you with every sport. A lot of people watching different sports. They got you covered with soccer, golf, racing, NASCAR, UFC. It's all there at BetOnline. Easy to use, simple to use, and there's a reason why they're an industry standard. Head to the website today, grab your mobile device, BetOnline, where the game starts. Again, I want to thank everybody. I want to take this second while this chat is not working perfectly to thank every single person that's jumped into this community. This has been incredible. It's been humbling that this has grown the way it has, and it's completely a reflection of everybody that's tuned into this. So I really do appreciate it. I'm going to take this really quick break to pop out and pop back into the stream and see if that resets the chat. But worst case, I have the chat next to me, and we're going to keep it rolling. So give me 1 sec to try to fix this. All right, and we are back, and I see perfect. I see the chat. Love it. So we can get to a bunch of comments here. And I apologize for the technical difficulties. I don't know. I'll blame Scott, but
that's why I'm here.
Justin couldn't make the show. Rajiv couldn't make the show. Let's keep talking though about Scott. One of the things that Justin talked a lot about with CJ, I don't want to say the shot across the bow to the rest of the conference, but again, just at some point nationally, Wisconsin is now going to be looked at as a school that's able to go and get quarterbacks, receivers, and it happened quicker than we thought, but it's happening. And I'm seeing the scared posts from Minnesota fans and Nebraska fans and Iowa fans. Like Wisconsin feels like it's elevating itself in a very quick fashion here. Yeah,
a lot of insecurities being projected, and yes, inject that into our veins for sure. I would be worried if I would, if Nebraska would be doing what we're doing right now, I'd be pretty concerned. I mean, they're not doing that. I think Rule's going to be a solid coach for them. I think he's going to be a big improvement, but they're not doing what we're doing right now. That's for sure. And I think even with the talent that we had before, if we stayed fairly status quo, with Fickell coming in, I was predicting we'd win another game or two and maybe win 8 games next year with Mertz at quarterback, with basically the same team. So adding several 4 stars, and we're obviously thinking Mordecai is going to be the starter next year, who's got 2 years of, experience, and he's thrown over 70 touchdowns. We've got all these other transfers. We've got a lot of talent coming back too, I think. So that's why I'm feeling like, and I'm predicting 8 to 10 wins. And as I've said, I feel better about above 10 than below 8. I think it's more plausible.
Yeah, I'm about right there with you, man. Let us know in the comments where you're at, over under 10 wins next year. Brent McDonald has a really good comment here. 4 and 5 star kids bust sure, but they often succeed as well. Either way, you want as many swings at the plate as possible. The other thing about it is 3-star kids bust way more often than 4-star kids. I mean, if we're just being realistic, I remember how excited we were for Marcus Allen committing, a 3-star receiver, Michigan. I mean, this is just another level of talent. And there is a reason this kid had offers from Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Texas. I mean, you name the blue blood. They wanted CJ Williams, and he's coming to Madison, and he's got lots of eligibility left too, by the way, which is another theme of Fickell.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you'd rather have a bunch of 4 and 5 stars than 3 stars. I mean, I know that was kind of our shtick for a long time. I do think that there were some insecurities from the fan base about that too. Like, we develop guys, and that's what we do with this program. I mean, there's a reason why Georgia and Alabama and OSU have nothing but 4 and 5 star guys. And some of them bust, and we just never hear about them, but all of their stars are 4 and 5 stars, like all of them. Mm-hmm. So this has propelled us into the next stratosphere as a program, though. Before we even take the field, obviously, it's got to translate. There's no reason to think that it won't, though, when you've got an experienced quarterback now. If we were coming in with Evers this year, who knows? But coming in with Mordecai, who's a proven quarterback, and even if CJ Williams did bust, I feel solid about our other wide receivers. Like, I think Bell and the space he's going to be given. Longo's talked a lot about, these guys as weapons and not coaching them after they get the ball, just letting them be, instinctive. I think Bell is fully capable of having a big year next year. There's no reason to think that Bell won't have 45 to 55 catches in this system. You would actually kind of expect that to happen. Mm-hmm. And Lewis being, a deep threat, he can show off that speed more, again, in space. So we're leveling up for sure.
Yeah, and Derek Ostrander, by the way, says, I feel like I'm playing Wisconsin on NCAA 14. Yeah, this is how I would stack Wisconsin's recruiting on 14, bringing all these 4 and 5 star receivers and selling them on stuff that was not true. The next comment here, Ben Alden says, is CJ Williams better than DK or Bell already? I think it's impossible to say. Yeah, but I do think he has the physical ability. Like I went back and watched his All-American highlights and playing against some of the best cornerbacks in the country, All-American Bowl highlights. And he is making contested body catches that remind you of Quintez Cephas. But I think he's a little better than Cephas coming out of that high school area. So
I do too.
He brings something into the fold that we talked about. What if he doesn't hit, right? Which is a valid question. But what if he does hit the ceiling? If he hits his ceiling, this is the best receiver in Wisconsin's room. Right. He's an alpha receiver, which I don't think we have an alpha.
Yeah. I think he's going to hit to a certain degree, just looking at all the tape I've seen, which in the last, 7 or 8 days since we've been in this frenzy, I've watched basically all of the high school tape I can watch on him. Those 50-50 balls are like 80-20 balls for him.
Right.
They really are. And that kid is built. He is already built. Very Cephas-esque. Yep. And yeah, he's faster. He's faster than Cephas. I think at the very least, he's going to be very solid for us. And like you said, the ceiling is like, 80 catches, maybe not this next year, but who knows? I think the ceiling is very high. And I think that triumvirate, like I said, and then with Tretch too, we haven't even talked about Tretch. I think Tretch is going to come in. He's ready-made. He's been playing basically the highest level of, high school football you can play. So he's got the quick twitch too. I think that they're going to find ways to get him in open spaces as well, Yeah,
and our chat is getting jacked up again, but I can still see new comments on my other feed. Ryan Eller says DK is more polished, but Bell will pass him this year. I actually like Bell a lot. I think Bell might have a little higher ceiling than DK even. Here's the other thing I talk about with our receiver room right now, and we talked about this with quarterbacks. We talked about this with defensive backs as well. You're trying to find different skill sets to fit in there, right? And this is, you mentioned jump balls, contested catches. This is a different skill set than we have in this receiver room right now, right? And I think that is almost an underrated aspect of this get because you're looking at the talent, you're looking at the star ranking. but we don't really have a guy to go make that incredibly tough 3rd and 7 catch over the middle with a cornerback draped all over him. This is the type of dude that can do that. And
Right.
I think it pushes everyone else down a peg too, right?
Yeah.
Now DK doesn't have to be the alpha necessarily.
Right. And because he wasn't really fitting that role that well either. And like you've spoken about before, like having a cheat code. If you can have a cheat code, with Williams and maybe a couple, like I said, that basically for 15 years, we relied on a running back to be the cheat code. Our entire offense revolved around having an All-American running back. And now if you can have one on the outside in a Williams and then on the inside in a Tretch, where you need those 3rd and 4s, quick slant, money every time. If you get a couple of cheat codes on offense, it completely changes the game.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, the fun thing with this, we were talking to Chrissy Freud today about air raid and Phil Longo. Our running backs can still be that cheat code.
Right.
Like it's not
maybe more so.
Yes. By the way, did anybody in the chat, anybody on see Braylon Allen's tweet? He said, I'm so done with those 9-man boxes. I'm never going to see those again.
Yeah.
Right? He was a guy that was defending Paul Kristen and Jim Leonard, if you remember. But he very quickly realized that probably wasn't the best offensive system for me, and I'm going to have more freedom now. It's a remarkable turnaround, not just with the program, the roster, but inside the locker room with Fickell.
Yeah, and we talked about it, though, Ryan, when we hired Fickell, about those guys are doing the right thing now, having Leonard's back, even when Christ was fired. But they'll be saying another thing when they get a guy in who's developing people into pros at every position. And he's just a year removed from a college football playoff with a non-P5 school. What can he do at this place? What can he do for you when you start talking to, when guys like Sauce Gardner start talking and, all of a sudden we're getting snowed in, So I think it changes when those kids start to see the cachet that Fickell has and how that could directly impact their futures too and NFL possibilities.
Yeah, for sure. This is an interesting comment from David Wagner. We should all send a thank you card to PJ Fleck for not choking in the X game like Minnesota did versus Iowa. I mean, think about this alternate world where what if Wisconsin wins the X game? Jim Leonard goes out with that rivalry win. Is there a possibility where that was the tipping point for Chris McIntosh, or was he always going with his vision?
I think he was open at the beginning, and because they interviewed Fickell, wasn't it right after the Iowa game? Isn't that right?
I think it was
before that.
Yeah. I just wonder, it gets harder to fire Leonard if he wins the axe back, he gets the rivalry game. I don't know. I think either way, I think McIntosh had a vision, but you can't really say for sure.
Yeah, I think his mind might have been made up by the Minnesota game, though. Just the way we had continued to play. I mean, even though we beat Nebraska, let's be honest, it felt like a loss still. That game, you did not feel good after that game,
That's fair. Thomas Miller says this should be a big advantage next year. This is something that we haven't talked a lot about. I think it's a very interesting point. Teams will have to dig into film for this offense. It's going to be new to the Big Ten. We've talked a lot about, Scott, you and I have talked about this, potential growing pains with the new coaching staff coming in. But the Big Ten is going to have to adjust to this as well. This is going to be new for teams facing Wisconsin. Phil Longo's new to the conference. That's an interesting point by Thomas Miller there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big advantage, the element of surprise, really. And they can still look at Longo's, offenses, which they all will from North Carolina, but they haven't seen these players in that offense. And I mean, I think it's going to take 3 or 4 games for a lot of our opponents to even kind of gauge what we're doing this year. Again, Braylon Allen's going to look totally different than who they had playing running back for North Carolina last year. Our offensive linemen too, who have been underachieving for years now. We can debate as to why, but they have been one way or another. We've got top 5 national talent on that offensive line. It's like the one position where we've got 4 and 5 stars across the board. Does this help them out quite a bit so that they're not also facing 8 and 9 man boxes? I'm thinking it does, right? So I think it's a big advantage, that element of surprise for us.
We're going to take a really quick break here, get to some more of your comments. But first, a quick break for friends of our show. All right, we're going to bring Scott back in, take a bunch more of your comments. Scott joining us as always, or as not as often as we've wanted you to get on recently. It's been a minute, but welcome back. Bunch more comments here. Again, the chat is still acting weird, so I'm kind of copy pasting over, but Ryan Eller's offensive scheme is much easier to understand. Learning curve isn't as great. This was always a big frustration of mine with Paul Chryst. And again, it always seems to go back to that, but it's because the juxtaposition between these two staffs is so incredible to me. But we always heard how difficult it was for quarterbacks to pick up the Paul Chryst system. And I always was like, but why? Why have that system then? You don't have a quarterback for 4 years in college. You need to simplify it. And that's what Longo does. And I think that's what Ryan Ellers is hitting on here.
Yeah, they're like the antithesis of each other, too. It's like a simple system that cashes out big plays, and Chris' system was incredibly complicated to get, a 5-yard out. to get, let's execute the middle tight end screen that takes 7 different things going exactly right to get 8 yards up the middle of the field,
Right. Or the most complicated screenplay in the history of football. Let's run the middle tight end screen for 7 yards and act like it's like this incredible. It's a cool play when it works, but you could there's easier ways to move the football than putting Braylon Allen in the Wildcat and trying to throw the ball.
Yeah. I wonder too, where Ferguson would have actually been drafted if he would have played in Longo's system. Ferguson probably would have had 50 or 60 more catches over, his 4 seasons there. Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing he would have been, late second, early third round draft pick actually at that point. It's just going to improve everybody's draft stock so much.
Mm-hmm. Which is going to lead to more recruits, right? The more receivers. The fun thing with this is we're seeing the tipping point, but as this thing works and we think it'll work, right? Receivers and quarterbacks will start potentially going to the NFL from Wisconsin, which is only going to feed the recruiting. It becomes a positive feedback cycle here. And
Longo can already point to, AJ Brown, to DK Metcalf, to Downs, to, Sam Howell, all these pros. And then Fickell can point to all these pros off the defense and, Ritter. I mean, that's how we're getting these guys right now. That's how it's happening.
Due North Badger 715 says, do you envision them using Evers in a limited capacity for some design runs or RPOs? I do not. I think Mordecai is pretty mobile. I don't think they're going to want to take him out really at any point. And I just think they don't need to. I think they have enough weapons at receiver, tight end, running back. I guess I don't know. Phil Longo is pretty intelligent, and if he thinks there's an advantage to be had there, maybe he uses it in a moment. But I feel like Mordecai can do that anyway.
Yeah, I think we'll see him in the human victory cigar type moments this year, to be honest, which hopefully there's a bunch of them. Hopefully we still get to see a bunch of Evers, hopefully he throws 70 passes and, mop up duty this year. Who knows if in a big game, if they've got something, special up their sleeves or whatever. But I wouldn't expect too much of it. Hopefully the season goes well and we just don't see anything really from Evers, and we just hear that he's really progressing behind the scenes. We see some mop-up duty.
Tim says, and you'll like this comment, Scott. I know you're a Julius Davis guy. Tim says, I think Davis takes snaps away from Malusi. He needs to get up from the current staff. The one thing I'll say, and I've talked about this a lot, and I'm going to kick it to Scott because he loves him some Julius Davis. A new staff is going to come in with all new eyes on everybody, right? So players were maybe in a doghouse or not. I don't want to speculate, but certainly Julius Davis wasn't getting on the field with the previous staff. This new staff is going to have a new look at everybody. So I think you're going to see depth charts move around all over the board. So yeah, Julius, listen, the running back depth chart isn't very deep this year. So right. If it's ever going to happen, it's going to be this year for JD.
Yeah. And I've talked about it ad nauseum. He's got some of the best high school tape that, we've got on the team of any of the running backs. His high school tape is legendary. I insist that if he wouldn't have got hurt his senior year, he was going to run for 2,500 yards, and he might have been a 4-star himself. He was being recruited by LSU, by Notre Dame, by USC. So and when we've had a chance to see Julius, like, he looks like he's got some juice. Mm-hmm. He's got some wiggle to him, So I hope so. That being said, I hope that Malusi stays healthy. I hope we just have a stable where we're able to put these guys out. That's obviously what you just alluded to this. That's the one thing you have to be concerned about with the running back room, right? Like, we want to be using Nate White as kind of a gadget guy and not out of necessity because everybody's hurt. And so we're playing 180-pound true freshman running back as our workhorse. Like, we don't want that.
Yeah, a couple questions. I'm going to put this to the chat. Let me know in the chat and Scott, I'm going to ask you this as well. Where does CJ Williams fall on your incoming transfer power rankings if you have to get it? Like, for me, it's Tanner Mordecai. Is CJ Williams your second favorite transfer coming in this cycle, or is it Nick Evers? Is it Jake Renfro? Let me know in the chat where you would put CJ Williams. Scott, where would you put CJ Williams on your transfer portal ladder?
Yeah, I think it's probably 3 or 4. I'm going Renfro second. Because, and that's assuming he's going to be healthy and playing at the level he did, before he got hurt. But his tape, the guy's an animal. Mm-hmm. Like, he's an animal. He's going to step right in, and I think he's got a chance to be better than Tippmann, to be honest with you. Like, I think he's got, like, Biotish type talent. And we've got him for a couple more years, too. So... Mm-hmm. I just think that it's an offensive lineman, and that's, not the sexiest, position, but that's where you win the games, right? On the lines. So I would go Mordecai, Renfro, and then, I think I would go Evers, then Williams, to be honest.
I think I'm right there with you. Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I love the Renfro get. Like, don't forget LSU was hot and heady for
tells
Renfro.
You a lot, too.
Yep. And then I know we just landed a bevy of quarterbacks, and it's hard for us to get elite receivers, but quarterbacks still rule the roost. And you pulled a 4-star from Oklahoma who was an elite high school quarterback. I think Evers is 3 for me, and I'd probably go CJ Williams 4. A bunch of comments in here. We're going to get to some of these as well. I do want to bring this one up really quick. This is from Ryan's mom's basement, which that guy is gone. I don't think he listens to the show anymore. Early on in the Locked On Badgers podcast history, I did not have this kind of swaggy setup behind me. I had like a blank wall, and this guy kept coming on the show and saying, "Ryan, you'd be really good, but you look like you're recording in your mom's basement." And I would tell him, I'm working on it. I have a job. I'm trying to improve it. And he would get like upset with me, be like, "You're not listening to me. It doesn't look good. You're in your mom's basement." And I'm like, "I'm not. I'm in my barn.
I've got a job."
And listen, he was right, by the way. Like, the setup was I was just working. It takes time. I hope he comes back, man, and sees the work I did, because I listened to him. All right, let's get to some of these comments in here about the order. Ben Ness says he goes Mordecai, Williams, then Renfro. Ryan Ellers has Williams at 2. Let's see. This is a good one. Logan Couch has CJ Williams at number 1, which I get. Like, landing an elite receiver at Wisconsin feels, or at least it always felt like a pipe dream. Maybe even more than quarterback, because we did land Graham Mertz, So from Logan's point of view, I certainly get that perspective.
Right. And it's a sexy pick. I mean, if you end up getting the next AJ Brown on the team, and he plays to his potential, then of course, though, if Mordecai plays to his potential and he goes out and throws 34 touchdowns and 7 picks this year, and Braylon Allen runs for 1,300 yards, we're almost unbeatable at that point. So I still think it's got to be Mordecai, at least for next year. Maybe in the long term, I mean, if CJ Williams has 2 All-American seasons, then, go back and say, maybe change our minds there. Either way, we're having this conversation, and we've got a lot of people in the top 5 who we never would have imagined we would have gotten. So.
Darren Wyman says Williams is short-term exciting, but long-term great. Renfro and Mordecai are easily the top two right now. And I agree with that. I think if you get an elite quarterback and an elite center that are both ready to start next year, I mean, that's incredible. You plugged two holes with proven starters. It's with years of experience. It's just those are such good gets, and they instantly make this team better next year. Not in the future, not projection.
Right.
Next year are way better because of those two pieces.
Yeah. So, and those two guys control the offense. Like the offense runs through those two guys.
Also getting some comments on Vacos. Garrison Lindley, has Vacos at number 3. I'll put that comment up here. Again, the comments are acting weird today. It's just not working, so I'm kind of copying and pasting stuff over. I don't know why that is, but we're making it work. So Garrison Lindsay says, I have Vacos top 3. Vacos, by the way, we're getting him on the show. He's kind of confirmed. So that's going to be a fun interview.
He's got swagger. Yeah, serious swagger.
Listen, Garrison, I agree, though. Like, you're getting a kicker. We talked about it alters the way you call plays. If you have a kicker you have faith in, you don't have to either go for it or punt from the 32-yard line anymore. You know what I mean? Like, that's the position you're in if you don't have a really strong leg kicker when you're at the 34-yard line. Do I punt here or do I try to go for it on 4th and 6? Now you can just kick the field goal and feel confident in getting 3 points on the board.
Yeah, or if you're Ferentz, that's the dream situation to throw in a 14-yard punt. He gets off on that, man.
Mm-hmm. I love it. All right, we're going to start to wrap this up here. I had so many more comments. Brett McDonald says Vacos is a hell of a recruiter too. No joke. He's been on every single recruit, by the way,
yeah.
Vacos, which is awesome.
He's got swagger, man. And I looked at his Instagram, and it was like nothing but like chicks from like OU, Ohio, were like, we're going to miss you. The dorms aren't going to be the same. Like, I think he's totally just like the swag king.
I love it. And by the way, don't you want that from your kicker? You want a guy who has total swagger, is unflappable. Also, by the way, has a 56-yard field goal on his resume.
Was a freshman. Like I said, I'm sick of seeing so many Wisconsin kickers go out shaking like a leaf for a 38-yard field goal attempt. You know? So, and, you know, if he gets to a point where he's even putting half of the kickoffs into the end zone, you know, it's a real weapon to have.
Yeah, I 100%. The kickoffs into the end zone, that's what we wanted Vito for, you know, and he just got hurt. It never worked, but that's one of the reasons we were excited for him. This is like a more proven version of Vito, which is incredible. Tim Williams, we're going to wrap up on here. Tretch, Pauling, DK will be top 4 receivers. Or Williams, Tretch, Pauling, DK. Thoughts, Scott?
I think it's too early for Pauling next season. I think that the top 4 will be Williams, DK, Bell, and Lewis. Williams, DK, Bell, Lewis, and I think Tretch is going to be in there quite a bit. It's a lot to ask a true freshman to just be like a starter, but I think Tretch, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 20, 25 catches this year still. I think that's doable in this offense, and have certain plays and formations where you can feature him and find matchups against a linebacker. You know, if you can, I guarantee you that they find some of those matchups this year where they're like, they've got a slow safety out there on Tretch, or they've got, you know, an inside linebacker they're trying to play a zone, and he just, you know, Devontae Adams, one cut and go.
He's going to eat them up. Yeah, I think my top 4, if I had to make a prediction, I think it's Williams, Bell, Chimere. Oh, I want to say Keontae, man, but
I do too.
I think Keontae is unique on this team. That's the other thing too, and we talked about it a little bit. You remember when we talked about Alexander Smith and how getting him back pushes everyone else down a rung, right? Like now, you know, Jay Shaw's guarding the number 2, and whoever's guarding the number 3, et cetera, et cetera. You know, that's the other part where if Williams hits, it pushes everyone else offensively down a rung. And now the opponent's top cornerback is no longer guarding Chimere DK. How much better does that make DK? Right? It's the ecosystem of offensive football matters, right? And one dominant piece, or one potential dominant piece, creates better matchups for every single other player. And I think we're going to see that this year across the board, which I'm very excited about.
I expect to see Bell going over the top quite a bit. He's got, I would say borderline elite speed. He's got good size. We saw it last year in that, the offense we ran before he did pretty well. He's a talented guy. And if he's on a nickelback, something like that out there, you got 4 wide, like I take that every day.
Brian Shetty, it is incredible the excitement these last few weeks have brought. I think that's a great way to end this show because this feed is acting wonky and I don't know if it's going to survive for some reason. But yeah, it's incredible, man. Scott is excited. I'm excited. Justin's even happy. It is incredible. And I none of us predicted this. Even when Fickell got hired, none of us could have predicted this, right?
No. Like I said, I was even fairly close. You're hoping that he pulls a decent recruiting class together, maybe gets a couple transfers, and we win 7 or 8 games next year. And, we slowly build up the team. Now it's getting your cake and eat it 2 time. It's like, we're going to build up the team and let's just go for let's win the Big Ten West and see Ohio State for the second time, or Michigan in Indy.
I love it, man. Scott, thank you so much for tuning in as always. Everybody in the comments, I apologize that we had some weird technical difficulties today, but I really, really do appreciate y'all so much. Come join our Discord. Check out what we're doing there. It's free. It's
awesome place.
It's awesome. Listen, if you haven't been on that, Discord's a forum. There's no nonsense. We don't do any political talk in there. We keep it respectful. It's really what we're trying to build with this whole community. So
it's really fun. And sorry to interrupt you, Ryan, but if you're a Badger junkie, which you most likely are because you're watching us right now, if you're on Discord, just boom, boom, boom. You get everything instantly, everything Wisconsin the second it happens. Then you get to talk about it, which is the best part. You get to talk about it with a bunch of Wisconsin junkies. So
yeah, and you know what just happened, Scott? The comments just started working just now. Like literally just now. So do you have time? Do you have a few more minutes?
Yeah.
Let's take a few more because this whole show, I feel like I've been distracted trying to make this work. The comments are back up. We have 497 people watching live right now, which is absolutely humbling.
Yeah. Awesome.
You guys are all amazing, and you guys are what makes this show incredible. All right, so let's take a couple more comments then because it's working again. So Thomas Miller, what is Discord? I'm old. I'm old too, man. My 40th is coming up this weekend, by the way. So the Discord is all it is. I'll put a link. In fact, I'll do it right now. The Discord is just like a forum, essentially. You sign into it, and it's just a forum. There's different threads. There's different places to talk. We talk Badger football, basketball recruiting, and all sorts of other conversations in there. So I'm going to put the link for that up right now. Feel free to join. But it's really just a place to talk.
Yeah. And you'll play around with it for a week or so, and you'll figure it out. It'll seem like a lot initially, but it's just a lot of Badger stuff,
Ryan Eller says Discord is our connective tissue.
Yep.
Jeff Adams, how do you join the Discord? Yep, it's going to be right here. Link going into the chat. Everybody should see it now. There's your link. Go join the Discord. Chop it up with us. You also get like advanced notice when I have guests on. I'll post, hey, this guest is coming up. Do you have any questions for him or her? Like, it's a great spot where you guys see what's coming up ahead. And if you have questions for a certain strength and conditioning coach that might be coming on the show next week, think about it. All right, let's keep this going.
Your giveaways? You've done giveaways in there?
We do swag giveaways. I highly, highly recommend it. Okay, let's see. The tight end, Trajan Prochnow says Cade Brong odds. I don't know. I'm telling you, I think we get him, and which is the same gut feeling I had with CJ Williams. He's the tight end commit coming out of Notre Dame, 4-star kid in last year's class. I think we get him, Scott. Yeah,
I think so too. It feels like it's been trending towards that, and again, he knows that he can come in and probably be an impact player right away too. At least have a good chance at doing that. So it would be another big get. But I agree. I think we're going to get him.
I'm just trying to go back. Now I'm trying to catch up with some of these comments here. We did have a comment. I lost it, but on the receivers, in the current receivers, do we have anybody with elite speed? I would say basically Burrows you brought in and Pauling, maybe, right? The 2 Cincinnati guys coming in probably have the best speed along with maybe Keontez Lewis.
I think Lewis. Yeah. I was reading something about like Lewis in high school ran like a 4.42 or something like that. So that's close to elite. It's not Christian Watson, but
Ryan's mom basement says hopefully they bring back the spring game so we can peek at the roster. Listen, we're going to try to do a meetup at the spring game, by the way. We're going to try to do a locked on meetup. I would love to rent out a spot, have some free beer for people, chop it up, do some giveaways, just build the community. So another thing that is going to be planned out, but look for that coming up. A couple more comments here from people. This is in the transfer rankings. Vast Sleep goes Mordecai, Evers, Williams, Renfro, Vacus. Another one for the kicker. And I love it.
Yeah.
No.
He is like Vacos and Renfro, I think, are really undervalued, even though they're both in the top 5 there in general, because it's not the sexiest of pickups. But I think both can have monumental impacts this year. Well, I think they will, but monumentally good impacts this year.
The other thing with the transfer rankings, and I actually wrote out, by the way, I wrote out my entire ladder of transfer portal rankings from top to bottom. There's not a single dude in that list that I feel like is filler. I think every single guy feels at least solid. Even a guy like Mike Trey, the slot cornerback they picked up out of Boston College, he's been a starter. Like he's been a solid player who's probably going to play this year.
Dude, he's ripped too. Like he looks like a grown man. I'm excited for Varner. I'm really excited for Varner. He moves really well on the line. What's his name? Petrowski? Is that from MSU?
I think it's Petroyski.
Petroyski?
The Michigan State transfer. Yep.
He looks like a Wisconsin linebacker. Like he's got that build. 6'1", 250, looks kind of like an animal.
Yep. Brian Strutt says Renfro's an attitude guy for the rest of the offensive line. He's already come out and said we have huge goals here. And he gives off that kind of that mauler mentality. So I think that's just an unbelievably underrated pickup. And the two defensive ends we talked about, and the two guys both would have, Varner would have been second on the team in sacks last year.
Right.
And the last season Petroyski played, he would have been second on the team in sacks. Petroyski. Yep. Tim's got us. Petroyski would have been second on the team in sacks as well. You're bringing in two guys who had Alec James level production from a pass rushing standpoint. And neither one is going to replace Herbig, but combined, it's kind of a money ball approach potentially where the aggregate makes up for some of that, I think they did an incredible job in the portal.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what some of our younger linebackers look like with the year under their belts. Inside guys were looking a lot better by the end of the season. Do we know if Chaney's staying yet?
Yeah, Chaney's staying.
Okay. That's huge because I think a lot of people are sleeping on him. I think he can really be an impact player.
Yeah, so I talked to his dad, and one of the things he talked about is I really talked and taught my kids to embrace change. So I just can't imagine that conversation, and then he transfers. So Chaney's coming back. I think he has a lot of instinct, a lot of Chris Orr in him.
Yeah, he's fast too.
Yeah, maybe we finish up here because now it is 48 minutes, and I feel like I'm keeping people hostage, which certainly people can leave, but I don't want to keep people for too long, Scott included. I do want to mention Greg Scruggs, hired as the defensive line coach. He was the assistant. We haven't even got into that yet. That's a big hire. Assistant defensive line coach for the Jets last year. He had coached for Luke Fickell at Cincinnati, been in the NFL as well. He's a 7th round pick. This is a guy that has a reputation of being a very good recruiter, very good coach. I think this staff is filling out incredibly well also. We're talking a lot about players coming in. I think this staff is becoming also a strength.
Yeah, he's got the relationship with Fickell, got christened in the NFL a little bit. So he's got 3 or 4 years of coaching experience now, a lot of playing experience. He's young enough he can still relate to the players, I think, which is a big deal. I think it was kind of a problem with some of our coaching staff like in prior years. Just not having enough guys who can relate to the players. We've got a really good mix now.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And you're still waiting on a running backs coach, outside linebackers coach. I agree with you on the mix too. It felt like under Paul Chryst, Ken, but it's so easy to compare and contrast these two because they're so different. It felt like he really leaned towards, for good, better, and worse. I'm going to say it for better and worse thing. It felt like he really leaned towards coaches, right? And not recruiters, not not people who would push to the next level necessarily, but people who felt like solid, great guys and solid X and O's people. But you can't just do that. You need grinders on the recruiting trail.
Yeah.
And it feels like we have a more complete staff in that sense now. And Scruggs is a big part of that, I think.
Yeah, you do that, what Paul Chris did for too long, and you get fired. So,
which is what happened. Let's finish up here because I thought this was a good comment too. I keep saying let's finish up here, but I'm so excited that the chat is working again. There was a comment and I lost it. Vast Sleep said in a previous comment, am I the only one that wanted a veteran rental at outside corner? As of right now, I believe it's Alexander Smith or Hallman on the outside, which isn't amazing. Yeah, that's, we haven't really talked about corner. It's a good point. I think we like Alexander Smith. I don't know. Yeah, I like him a lot too. Who is our number 2 right now?
Well, I mean, it might be Hallman. I think we're going to have a lot of youth and inexperience, at corner. Luckily enough, and we talked about this previously, it's a lot of talented youth and inexperience. I'm guessing there'll be some growing pains, but I also think that they'll be buttressed by a lot of talent and experience at safety too. So I think that that's going to help. I think there's a lot of cool stuff we can do with our safeties that will help our cornerbacks. And I do think that Alexander Smith I think he's an above average starting, Big Ten corner. Like he was able to shut some people down. You get a full year out of him. We'll see what happens, but I think the transfer from BC will help. And, we'll have to figure out the other one, let him fight it out through spring, fall.
Yep. Ryan Ellers says Snowden will be playing early and a lot. Certainly possible. He was on my list of potential early impact guys because he's very different. The other 2 names I'll give you really quick to roll out on. Avion Jones, I think, is going to be a baller. I really, really believe he's going to be a baller.
I forgot. Yeah, I think I totally agree.
Yeah, he's a longer corner. Yeah, he's a longer corner. He kind of fits the Fickell mode. And he was a guy, by the way, people don't know this. He had much bigger offers come at him. He stayed at Wisconsin. I think he's a baller, and he noticed he got into the bowl game at the end. And then I'm really curious to see what they do with Al Ashford. With all the safeties, I wonder, again, that's kind of a Fickell type of a guy, bigger, taller, faster. I wonder if they move him back to corner and see what they have there as well with Al. So anyway, let's wrap it up there. It's 52 minutes. Everybody in the chat, y'all are amazing. I'm sure we'll talk again tomorrow because I'm sure there'll be another 4-star recruit that pops.
Tight end.
Yeah, could be. Still could use a defensive lineman as well.
Yeah.
And that's Commandant Klink mentioning, is there anyone on the T-line we're in on? We could use a nose guard, right? If you got a nose guard, this would probably be the perfect offseason, quite frankly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's be honest, though. It's perfect 10 times over compared to what we thought it was going to be.
Agreed.
So, feeling pretty good about it.
And with that, on Wisconsin, appreciate all y'all so much. I'm sure we'll talk again tomorrow. So let's go, and we'll talk later. Thanks for sticking with us through the technical difficulties, by the way.